Okay, so welcome to the launch of issue 10 of the Alchemy Spoon. I'm Roger Bloor, one of the merry gang that produced this. So a few housekeeping rules. Mary's already said if you can just mute yourselves unless we're applauding or whooping. And the plan is that I'll hand over in a bit to the rest of the team. They'll introduce poets in groups of 3s and 2s, and then we'll have a break for some applause, and we'll just move through the evening like that. So welcome to the launch, and I'm going to hand over to Tamsin. Tamsin's been an excellent guest editor for us on this edition. She's selected some brilliant poems and curated a really interesting selection of them in the issue, which is still available for sale from the undoubtable Clayhanger Press. So I'll hand over to Tamsin.
Thank you, Roger. I just had such a blast doing this, working with the team. It was brilliant. There were so many enjoyable poems that came. No sign, zero sign, actually, of that cliche about men not being able to write about their feelings. We had loads of really high quality poems about friendship from men. It was just great. Some people did actually try and slip a romance poem, a love poem in the selection. You know who you are. And I really only went for that. I think friendship is a completely different department, although allied, obviously. And I really only went down that line when people explored romance love that had turned into something else, that had perhaps changed and become something else. And quite a few people did explore that territory, and we have got some poems from that. As I've written, there's a hand. I can see a hand with a glass coming into Roger's view. I wish I had one of those. I wrote in the editorial about the forms being very simple, and they were. And I was thinking about that. Why did most people write either in free form or couplets and tercets? Why was that? And it did seem as though they were carrying a burden of content that meant they had, well, my theory is that there was less creative energy left over to really work with a frilly form or a very demanding form, and we saw very little of that. It was a terrific process, trying, not only choosing them, but I really enjoyed trying to curate the issue and get everybody's in the best possible order so they all zinged off each other. And I did find it a lot at first. And what I did was I got myself, my top tip here is for £22 you can buy a wallpaper table. And as long as you don't lean on it, it's brilliant for going backwards and forwards on a stool with wheels, which I also own for cutting dog hair. And you can zip up and down like a sort of power mad poetry person going this one there, this one. It was a really lovely experience. I enjoyed it. And I want to say why I enjoyed working on the Alchemy Spoon in particular, because it's one of my favourite magazines. And I have over the years supported quite a few, but this one seems to get the balance of quite a few things right. And I mean, I love a themed issue. Who doesn't love a themed issue? But when you're submitting and you haven't got one, then it's just annoying if you have. So Alchemy Spoon actually does unthemed issues as well. So that's brilliant. Unlike Magma, who rarely do it, if ever. I love a magazine that foregrounds the poems and the poets, because sometimes I feel what people want when they're buying a magazine or reading a poetry magazine is they want to know, can I get in there with the working poets and the work? Can I see this happening? Is this so rarefied that and aspirational that I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to join them? And maybe if I do, I'm doing it with something so long term. This is a working poets magazine, and I love that about it. And I also love a poetry magazine that's a little bit like a kids annual that you might get at Christmas or in the summer, with like a bumper pack of things to do. And in the Alchemy Spoon, you got all these different things that you can go back to. You get special QR code where you can go and see just the reader's poem, focus on that. That's great. I love the essays are always really sharp in this magazine. The personal view, I mean, Robin Houghton, if you don't subscribe to her spreadsheet, then you're missing out. And the interviews are really interesting. Choose really interesting people to interview. So for me, I really did enjoy being part of this. So thank you so much for inviting me to guest edit and be part of your team for a short while. And so now I'm going to stop all that and actually foreground the poets and the poems. And my first batch includes Elaine Hewitt, who is our special reader for this edition, Mark Chamberlain and Jake Wildhall. So Elaine's poems, as you will hear and later see if you've got the magazine, they do something really amazing, because to me, she's managed to encapsulate in the first poem, that she's got two in the magazine, I should have said that. She's got two. The first one, it's like she's condensed an entire historical novel into a short poem. You get all the vision and drama and atmosphere in this poem. It's amazing what she does there. And the second poem is, it focuses on a turning point in a relationship where, I mean, she does talk about this a lot in her QR code special, so do go there. But the turning point in a special friendship where something has intervened and the friendship is now going to be different. And that's a very poignant state of a friendship. And there were some really good poems that looked at that, but we loved Elaine's. So Elaine Hewitt is a poet and writer of creative non-fiction based in North Yorkshire. Her poetry has been published in various anthologies and journals, including The Interpreter's House, Arc Poetry Magazine, and Ink, Sweat and Tears. Her travel memoir, Heligoland, is forthcoming with Muschiello Press in autumn 2023. The second poet who will read in this batch, his poem is on page 35, and he's a poet who is prized for his precision of language and compact imagery. Mark Chamberlain is a poet and critic. His work has appeared in titles including the Times Literary Supplement, the Mechanics Institute Review, Magma, the Hudson Review, and the Best New British and Irish Poets 2019 to 2021. He's based in London and is a creative writing PhD candidate at Durham University. The third poet in this batch is Jake Wildhall. His poem's on page 36, and I truly loved the voice in the poems that he submitted, and I hope you're going to enjoy that too. Jake Wildhall founded publisher Bad Betty in 2017. He's the author of pamphlets Blank for 2019 and Solomon's World 2016, which was the Saboteur Awards Best Pamphlet longlist. He's been published in journals, online, magazines and anthologies, including Bath Mag and Broken Sleep's Hit Points. Over to you. So Elaine first.
Herring girls. Out of their element, fish fly into barrels at a rate of 60 per girl per minute. Pulsing blood red where brine works into wounds. Women's hands gut and flick. Mired in slime, arms and aprons are speckled with glinting scales. Annie from Lewis has seen this season 2 younger sisters packed into boxes, dead of a fever. Go home, the others said, but she can't, with an empty purse. Something in my eye, says Annie. They chorus, don't touch it. Tales of girls who went blind. Let Mavis. Stout arms pin her by the shoulders. Look up. Words breathed in her ear. Keep them open. A gull flashes across the sun. Warm muscle eclipses her eye. Sorry, lass. Out now? Annie ducks her head. Smell of oak wood smoke on the wind. Beneath closed lids, salt streams down.
Are you just reading the one? Are you going to read the other one?
Sorry, I was only asked to read the one, but I'm
Oh,
happy
are
to
you?
read the other
All
one.
right then. Then we'll save, I hadn't realised that, we'll save the special second poem for people who do go to that QR code. I recommend it. So let's move on with, sorry about that. Let's move on with to Mark Chamberlain. Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you, Tamsin, and everyone else on the editorial team involved in putting together this very beautiful issue 10. My poem's called A Rug by Rachel Scott, and it's dedicated to my friend, Scott Midgley. She flicked through the corners of a stack, then left me to it. Frank's sick in bed, she said, and I need to take him up a cigarette. Reckoned she did this one around 67, when her eyes were keen. See the detail. Here, take these. Give it a spray every now and then. Keeps the moths off. Your words taught as Rachel's weave, now under my feet at the desk, on long-term loan with you and Thomas away. Memories as her coloured quadrilaterals, the drunken fumblings and the finer things, smoking with tea out the back doors, the three of us, driving through the rain in and out of the city. Would have turned to dust by now without them.
Thanks, Mark. And now Jake. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you to all the editors of the magazine, and thank you for having me in Alchemy Spoon. It's been lovely. I haven't got my issue yet because it's in the post on the way to me, so I'm going to read off my computer. So if I look like I'm staring at my computer in a weird way, that's why. But yeah, thank you to all the readers and all the editors. I've got friends I only communicate with in, it's dedicated to one of my best friends and someone who I think is one of the best people on earth, Harry Wills, who I love dearly. I've got friends I only communicate with in reels. How you been, brother? Like, all right still. For sure, life is just happening. Have you seen the one with the pan lid? Have you heard the one where they dub a man over a goat? Yeah, I am the goat. I am Annie, are you okay on ice? It's double tap. It's hearts on our story, it's hearts on our sleeve. It's 1 a.m, it's 6 a.m, it's do you ever sleep? It's late shift, morning shift, memes no doubt. It's hugs on sight, but it's spud, it's touch. I've got your back in a fight. I'm shit at FIFA, but I'm that friend. I'm drunk. Do you need anything from the shop? Yeah, but I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man. There is infinite ways to watch someone be hit in the head. Infinite different items it can happen with. We've probably seen them all. We say low a lot, but it always means lots of love. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks. Thanks so much, Jake. I can go and I expect really what it was the babies want to listen to Daddy read before they go to bed. So thanks very much. So now I'm going to introduce the next batch, which is a batch of 2, and they are poets that unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight. The first one is Julie Robick, who many of you will know well. Her poem was clearly immediately the poem that would end the selection. So she was always going to be the last poem. But unfortunately, we can't do that in this selection. So she's out of place now. I'll be putting her next. Gilly was born in India, puppeteer and voice in film, theatre and television. Her poems appear in many magazines and anthologies. Her poetry collections, Swimming Through Marble and Lightfalls, are published by Live Canon. Also her pamphlet, Open Skies in Aid of Ukraine. A third collection is due this year. The second recording is from Matthew Cayley. He's got 2 poems in the issue, and he's dealing with a delicacy in the writing about changing relationships that was quite outstanding, I felt. So Matthew Cayley has published 6 collections. His 7th collection, To Abandon Wizardry, is published by Blood Axe in November 2023. He's currently Associate Lecturer in Creative Writing at the University of St Andrews. I think Roger's going to play the videos now.
Hello, I'm Gilly Robick. This poem is called Portraits, after Howard Hodgkin. Some of my friends fit the room, touch it with orange impasto. Some exist in their likeness, leave me outside searching the streets. Some are woven, textured, not imposing, but belonging. Some lurk on the edge, implicit, framed but not pulling focus. Some jar their own instability onto fold-away scenes, command loudly. Some of my friends are vector and pattern, the colour of dance. Thank you.
Hello, Alchemy Spoon people. Hello, Roger, Mary, Tamsin and Vanessa. Thanks for inviting me to read and for putting a poem in the magnificent Alchemy Spoon. My poems kind of start in many different ways, but one of the ways in which they start is just from one word, which I feel is so beautiful a word. I want to further it. And that word, for instance, might be archipelagos. What a beautiful word. And there's a poem, and here's a subtle plug, in my next book called, which comes out from Blood Axe on November the 16th this year, which is called The Archipelagos, and which everyone will say is an environmental poem. It isn't. It's just about that word, the archipelagos. And that word is also in this poem I'm going to read, along with another beautiful word, estrangement. What a beautiful word that is. I've never understood why people would split up rather than be estranged. I mean, the second is almost a lovely thing. Anyway, enough of all this blather. I'm reading to you on a satellite link, as it were, because as we speak, I'm probably on a coach somewhere between Lille, Nuremberg, Prague, or Konitsa in Moravia. Anyway, here's the poem. To test out our estrangement, for the high of it, to seek summer air, you being so there and yet not, the warm phone of it sloughing and slaloming, the toxins hidden, presenting yourself as such, blowing through, cleaving to your cells, disappearing, as if touch could summarize the bare stretches of night that insinuate between our thoughts, and we could get somewhere. The taut sandlines of a beach looping and refreshing and erasing themselves, then see beyond that for the sigh of it, an archipelago, us 2 flamingos on 2 separate sand shells. Thank you.
Brilliant. So thank you very much to those poets. I think we're allowed to unmute and clap thunderously. So well done, Elaine, Mark, Jake, and Ginny and Matthew. So now I'm going to hand over to Vanessa, who will introduce her batch of poets. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tamsin. It's really lovely to be here. I've been having a little bit of a break for the last couple of issues, and so I feel slightly like an imposter when people are thanking me for things, because I haven't done all that much except edit. The three other people here, Mary, Roger and Tamsin, have done all the work. But at one point I found myself locked out of the submission system, so I couldn't just go in there and have a read. And I felt kind of quite left out. You know, I kind of want to be here, but I'm struggling with it a bit with time. But it's so lovely to hear all these poems and see the people who contributed, and I feel like it gets better and better. It's really lovely to see it drop through my door the other day, and it's nice to be part of the launch and see you all. And I'm going to introduce four poets, but I'm going to introduce two and then another two. And the first poet that I'm going to introduce is Helen Demetriades, and I do hope I said your name right. Helen is a debut collection. The Plumb Line was published by Hedgehog Press in 2022. She's a psychotherapist who lives in South Devon, published in magazines and anthologies and placed in competitions. She won the Silver Wyvern Poetry on the Lake 2022. And when Helen's read, we'll have Chris Hardy. Chris Hardy's travelled widely. After years in London, he now lives in Sussex. His poems have been published in magazines, anthologies, online, and have been highly commended and shortlisted in the Poetry Society, Live Canon, and other competitions. Chris's new collection, Key to the Highway, is published by Shoestring Press. So Helen, if you'd like to read your poem, that would be lovely.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you all for inviting me into this edition. Fellowship. Touched by a tiny white flower, I inherit the earth. I've been tumbled under big skies, a diaspore. Friends have been strewn like drift nets on beaches. I dig up a buried friend who says, eternity has no interest in chronology. I dive into her words, delight in our shared seabed. Thank you.
Chris, would you like to read, please?
Okay, thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. It's great to be here and in this lovely magazine. My poem is called Zippo. It's on page 13. Any of you who have been serious smokers will know what a Zippo is, and Lucky Strike. And this poem is a response to a forgotten and recently found photograph which was taken in the jungles of Borneo long ago, just as these remembered friends were forgotten long ago. Zippo. Isabel in a bikini. 6 of us round a jungle pool, leaning on each other's shoulders, as boys do, mates, but no one leans on her, tall, smiling, a pineapple held like a child or gift before her belly with both hands. Monkeys and hornbills hoot and croak as we walk back down the trail, burning leeches off our legs with one last lucky strike.
Thank you so much. I love how a theme of friendship leads to leeches. It's great. The second two poets that I'm going to introduce are Dave Wakely and Matt Bryden. Dave has worked as a musician, university administrator, poetry librarian, and editor. His writing has appeared in several magazines and anthologies. He lives in Buckinghamshire with his husband and too many books, CDs, and guitars. Matt Bryden. is a poet and teacher living in Devon. He has published a pamphlet, Night Porter, in 2010, a first collection, Boxing the Compass, in 2013, and more recently, a pamphlet, The Glassblower's House, in 2023. Take it away, Dave.
Oops.
You're muted.
That's better. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to read you a poem called Putney, 1983. This is dedicated to a friend called Raj, who I'm delighted to say, despite the scare that's one of the themes of the poem, is very much still with us. Putney, 1983. Tuesday mornings after signing on, we run the risk of friction burns on your single bed's brushed nylon sheets, while Wonder Woman glares down, disapproving from your melamine wardrobe door. Hands on hips like a Mardi housewife, more fish and chips than stars and stripes. She still adds a top note of glamour to our baser reeking whiff. Clearasil and corner shop cider, a classic young male scent. Dad would say we should be bloody well stoned for this, you tell me, gleefully. Too right, I nod, as green under the fingernails as I am behind the ears, wondering how one benefit check could ever cover enough tobacco to comply. And then you roll over, giggling, those long brown fingers scratching at the bright pink plaster that hides the purple spot on your inner thigh that never seems to heal. Friday nights this summer, stood by your gate while we mount bikes and leave for the common. Your mum's turmeric yellow anxious hands fidget in her apron pockets. She's still ashamed to smoke in front of us, her eyes tennis balling between our clothes and her watch. Be home by midnight, she always says, panic lingering under optimism. And will you ever put a jacket on? One of these nights you'll catch your deaths.
Thank you, Tamsin, and everybody involved. It's really nice to be in the Alchemy Spoon. I had a read of it last night and I really loved it. This poem is set in a summer school. I've worked in lots of summer schools, and apart from often being shambolically run, they are also often hotbeds of romance among staff in a very intense environment. So this is called My House Parent is Weeping on a Rock. In his hand, the castanet of a mobile. He could be calling his girlfriend in France or fielding bad news from the family, his crossed legs quite off the ground. I pass along the gravel path and nod, leave him to his traumas as my eyes adjust to the field's dark. Neither of us will mention this incident to the other.
Thank you so much. If everybody would like to unmute and give a round of applause to the readers, that would be lovely. And now it's my turn to hand over to my colleague Mary Mulholland to introduce 5 more poets. And Mary just does so much work for the Alchemy Spoon that I feel like I should be crouching in the corner. Go for it, Mary.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Vanessa. No crouching, really. But also enormous thanks to Tamsin for your wonderful contribution, for making issue 10 such a pleasure to produce. It's always fun working on a magazine. A lot of work, yeah, it's true, but you'll make it worthwhile, and you're the reason we do it, so thank you. So it's my pleasure now to introduce the final batch of readers, and I'm going to do them in 3 and then 2, and so please remember your order, and so just go sort of smoothly from one to the next and unmute and read your beautiful poems. So first up, we're going to have Jane Campbell and Women's Land, which is on page 19. Multi-award winning Dyke poet Jane Campbell recently won the 2022 Disability Arts Kimru Creative Writing Award for her poem Aroused. She's a new phase poet, having her first collection published age 57. She's winner of the 2021 Jeff Stevens Memorial Poetry Prize with her debut collection Slowly as Clouds. Next up, we'll hear Flasher 1991, which is on page 29 by Victoria Gatehouse. Now, Victoria is a zoologist who is based in the Pennines. She came to poetry in midlife following a career in science. Her poems have been widely published in magazines, anthologies, and placed in many competitions, as we heard earlier, most recently in the Ginkgo. So Victoria's pamphlet, The Mechanics of Love, was published by Smith Doorstop and selected as a laureate's choice. And then the third of the batch will be Neil Douglas, who'll be reading his poem, Toilet Rolls at Armageddon, which is just the best title ever. Neil worked as a GP and community paediatrician and is currently an MA student in life and creative writing at Goldsmiths University. I think he's just completing that. So we wish him luck. Neil is published in many magazines and anthologies in the UK, North America, and Hong Kong. So it's over to you, Jane, Victoria, and Neil.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me to be in the magazine. I'm really thrilled. This is the first time this poem's been read, and it's the titular poem from my new collection, which is actually called Women's Land and Other Secret Islands. So this is Women's Land. A circle of greening caravans, trucks and handmade shacks. For 50 years, witches have called this high ridge small holding home. I came to see what I look like with my wig off, my thorns pulled in. Watched sisters cut their hair, wield chainsaws and axes, work together to coppice wood, force shared fires to a red roar. At first, I learned how to compost conflict, honor my moon tides, until the day my final bloods were fed to a favorite rose. Now, the sweat lodge beckons to our sky-clad skin and bones, and we crow cackle our heart songs long into the star bright. Thank you.
Hi, I think I'm next. Can you hear me okay? So thank you, Roger, Mary, Tamsin and Vanessa. I'm so thrilled to be in the Alchemy Spoon, such a beautiful issue. And my poem, you mentioned I trained as a zoologist, was when I was a student in Nottingham University over 30 years ago. And one of the first people I met was a girl called Helena. We became really good friends. And quite often after lectures, we would stay on the university campus and just sit on a bench by the lake. And this is about an experience that we had together. Flasher, 1991. It's an hour before dusk and our mouths are sweet. We chuck peel into the dappled shadows of laurels. My eyes are sore. I slip my lenses out, and less than a meter away, a man is stripping off. I don't realize he's there until my friend shifts, uneasy. He's watching, blurred against lush greenery, and even without contacts, I see what he wants me to see. And for the first 3 seconds, it's almost funny. We shuffle the length of the bench, oranges starting to roll. Then my friend yells, "Run like fuck," and she's up, her feet winged, mine splitting the soles to shoot tarmac, seek earth. He's starkers and wreathed in foliage, and panic is making a myth of this. Walls close around cells. I'm halfway between girl and tree when my friend hauls me up by the roots. He is gathering peel. We don't look back. The young policeman winks as he asks, "Did we notice what he wore on his feet?" I wasn't looking at his feet, my friend says, and how we piss ourselves the same way I joke about the second and the third. My friend and I lose touch. Sometimes I think of her when skirting that bend in the lane where laurels hedge me in. One of the places I've learned to quicken. How easy it is for Russell to enter the breath. Thank you.
Hi, thank you everyone at Alchemy Spoon. This is Toilet Rolls at Armageddon. I have panic bought, and high shelves have emptied into my cupboards, onto my stair, the garage, overflowed to ceiling high, a 3-ply flood lapping the corners. So when the electric goes, I will, alone in the dark, soak a chosen one in paraffin, set it aflame high atop the lavatory brush to light the way, while high on fumes I build a bonfire with select others to sizzle my last egg. Then, only when all the food is gone, and high as they are in natural fibre, though some have become companions, friends, I shall consume them one by one. Thank you.
That was just great. Thank you so much, Jane, Victoria and Neil. So next up we have Lines Following Amy Clampett by Caspar Bryant, which is on, you can find it on page 33. Caspar Bryant is a poet from West Cornwall. Their work can be found in Spam Zine, Broken Sleep, Ink, Sweat and Tears, Deluge Zine and Propel magazine. He currently lives in Fife. And then to round us up with the poems, we have suitably The Back of You by Judith Wozniak. Judith has an MA in writing poetry. Her poems have appeared in the Alchemy Spoon, Fenland Poetry Journal, the Frogmore Papers, London Grip and Ink, Sweat and Tears. She won first prize in the Hippocrates competition 2020 and her pamphlet, Patient Watching, was published by the Hedgehog Press in 2022. You can find Judith's poem on page 46. So it's over to you, Caspar and Judith. And if you just want to follow one on from the other, unmuting as you do that, it'll be great to hear your poems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. And thank you for all of the readers. This has been wonderful. I'm having a lovely time. So this is Lines Following Amy Clampett. Nomads enamored of clover leaves. We tangle in bedrooms as leaf meets twig, an intimacy at the spine, insisting on our constellation as just friends, but it's always morning when you're moving out. I like to imagine dust when I'm sick of how voices roll along the floor, of tongues held too warmly in the mouth, hot, filthy dust building up in left behind rooms. In a way, our bodies are only on loan, motion a privilege of time paid with the credit of jostling cells, squishing organs, unbroken feet. What do you think of a stem which feeds and folds flowers into each other, into stillness? Not me.
Hi, thank you for including me in this wonderful magazine. This is The Back of You. I must have taken it with my Brownie camera, a black and white snap, the back of you in a baggy dress, a tangle of unruly curls. I'm following you through the prickly grass, path from your farm to the old quarry, out of bounds, across a disused railway line, to watch your brother play dare with the boys. We often smuggled cake from the pantry, wrapped in hankies tucked in our pockets. My mother, staying with your aunt in the big house, had no idea where we were. You always looked out for me, shouted at the boys who called me Queenie, mimicking my Essex twang. Do you remember those plays we put on, dressed up in your aunt's negligees, floaty scarves and beads? I think the line about taking a lover put a stop to it. I overheard my mother whisper, those two, too old for Noddy, too young for Lolita. Years later, I heard you'd run away, left your home and job. I saw you once at your aunt's funeral, elegant in black. I tried to catch your eye, but your face was hidden under a broad-brimmed hat. Thank you.
That was truly fabulous. So a big thank you to Jane, Victoria, Neil, Casper and Judith. And if you'd all like to unmute, we'll thank all the poets who have read, and then I'll hand back to Roger.
Yay!
It's an excellent evening. I really enjoy launches. I mean, spend our time working through all these poems on paper, but then to hear them come out of the screen and to see the poets, it's a treat, it really is. And we've had some wonderful readings this evening. I've got a few things to do. I need to once again say thank you to Tamsin for being an excellent guest editor. It's really been fun working with her, and I think we've produced an excellent edition. Thank all the readers and all the poets who submitted, and all the ones who've managed to get their poems into the magazine as well. And it's a good edition. But now we're starting to look forward, and we're looking forward to the next edition. I want to introduce our guest editor for issue 11, and that's going to be Alex Corin-Tachibana. For those of you who don't know Alex, she's the author of this beautiful collection, Sing Me Down from the Dark, which has had some excellent reviews. And continuing to have excellent reviews. And as she tweeted, she was pleased to see it was sold out on Amazon, which is always a good thing to say. Alex's poems have been published in a wide number of places: Poetry News Review, The Moth, Poetry Wales, The North, Artemist, and The Alchemy Spoon. And she's been placed and shortlisted in a large number of competitions: Oxford Brookes International Poetry Prize, the Troubadour, Fish Prize, Life Canon, Winchester Prize, and Leeds Poetry Award, and performed in Aldborough, Winchester, and Portland, Oregon, which is the place to be performing. Currently, she teaches on the humanities and creative writing at Newcastle, and that's Newcastle on Tyne, the other Newcastle, not Newcastle under Lyme, the proper Newcastle where I am, and writes reviews, has got a master's degree in writing poetry and in Japanese language from Newcastle and Sheffield. And the reason we chose her is A, because of her poetry, and B, because she says in her bio she likes drinking Malbec, which always sounds a good reason for choosing a guest editor. So I'm going to hand over to Alex just to say a little bit about the next edition.
Thanks so much, Roger. Can everyone hear me okay? So it's really lovely to be here and a pleasure to listen to all of these poems this evening. I'm also very envious of that glass of wine in the background there, Roger, and Jeff, of your martini that we heard about earlier. So I'm really pleased to be editing the next issue. Thanks so much for inviting me, Mary and Roger and Vanessa. It's a hard act to follow with the current issue, so congratulations again, Tamsin, on that. I'm enjoying my copy at the moment. So I'm going to announce the theme for the next issue. So I'm really excited to tell you that the theme is, drumroll please, dun dun dun, colours. And it's open for submissions from September the 1st throughout September. And after sort of brainstorming lots of ideas with Roger and having settled on this, I was asking myself about my own work so far and wondering, have I used colour much in my collection? And just out of interest really for myself, I had a quick look through and I found that only 4 of the titles actually directly alluded to colours. I won't bore you with all of them now, but it was a bit interesting to find that some of them referred to colours in a sort of specific language and cultural context. And I'm sort of mentioning that because that might be a perspective for you to approach a poem about colour yourself, maybe. So one of my titles was Aka no Tanin in Japanese, which I translated as Red Strangers in English. And when I used to teach in Japan, I was thinking back, and I found that the Japanese language is really, really rich in its use of colour, and that colours came a lot into Japanese proverbs, and sometimes colours were even embedded in Japanese words. With the one the phrase I used in my poem, Red Strangers, if we were to translate it literally, it would just be complete strangers in English. However, I think you'll agree that Red Strangers is much more exciting, sort of conjuring up both danger and excitement together. And so I was thinking that might be a sort of field that people could investigate from their own cultural backgrounds and experience with language. And I also stumbled on another one of my poems, which I titled Clarty. And that was also alluding to colour, because it literally means filthy or muddy, but it's a dialect word from the Northeast and Scotland, I believe. And I only encountered it through my walks up here in Newcastle upon Tyne. So those were things that I thought would be interesting perhaps for people to explore, colour relating to specific cultures or in a language context. I was also thinking, have I read any particular poems that stick in my mind that are related to colour? And I remembered a poem from here. I don't know if you can see. Sorry, it's a bit unclear on the screen. So this is Ted Yu's Birthday Letters. And the final poem in the collection is titled Red, and it's about Sylvia Plath. And I'm not going to read the poem now, it's too long, but the poem begins, red was your colour, and the poem ends, but the jewel you lost was blue. It's a really amazing poem. You can go online and find it quite easily, but I was thinking that might be another potential prompt for people to use, to think, do I associate a particular colour with a certain person, or maybe more than one colour with a person, because Ted Hughes explores a few different colours in that poem. And you can look at that online, as I said, it will come up quickly if you Google Red by Ted Hughes from Birthday Letters. And the other thing I was thinking about when I was writing recently, I noticed that, I don't very often use colours in the title or use them directly, but they're sort of infused in my poems as our sort of sensory tool as writers using visual things. And I was thinking about nature writing, and recently I was trying to conjure up the scene of the nature when I was in Spain in the Extremadura region. And I thought of all the beautiful colours around me, such as in the gum rock rose flower. And I realised it's so hard to pin down those colours in writing. But it was an interesting experiment to try to do. And I found myself trying to describe the gum rock rose, which is a really sort of exuberant, beautiful flower. And I was doing that because I was trying to sort of align it with my emotional state of feeling really jubilant on this road trip through Spain. And so I thought that might be another way of coming at the theme of colour, thinking of colours in nature and how they might represent an emotional state, either now or at some time in the past. So those were just a few of my ideas when I was kind of brainstorming about colour myself, but I'm sure you'll all have your own brilliant takes on it. And I'm really, really excited to be reading these poems as they come in. So you can get started now. We open on September the 1st. And thanks so much for having me in advance, and looking forward to seeing your poems.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for that. And yeah, we're looking forward to all of those submissions rolling in. In the meantime, rather than have August off, we're launching our pamphlet competition. So the Alchemy Spoon Pamphlet Competition 2023 is going to be judged by Chris Hardy, whose bio you already heard, and it's opens on the 1st of August, so a couple of days time, and closes on the 31st of October. So what we're looking for is entries of 8 to 10 poems showcasing your best work, and all the details of that are on the Alchemy Spoon website, and if you buy a copy of the magazine, on page 107 of the magazine as well. And you could submit up to 2 entries, and the winner will receive a publishing contract with Clayhanger Press, 25 free printed copies of the pamphlet, an online Zoom book launch, and we're looking at a pamphlet of 24 to 32 pages of poetry. So hopefully you're going to keep Chris extremely busy sorting out piles of paper for the rest of the next few months, and we look forward to passing them on to him and looking at the final results of the competition. So once again, thanks to everyone who's attended, everyone who's helped us, and to all of our readers, and once again to Tamsin, guest editor, and to Alex for agreeing to come on board with us for the next issue. So thanks very much. That's it. Good night.